Hello, and welcome to Bothell High School Orchestra Radio. My name is Trevor McNamara, or just Mr. Mac, and I'm the orchestra director at Bothell High School, and I will also be your host for this radio show-style presentation. Today's program will feature performances from both the chamber and string orchestra classes, as well as performances of pieces put together by smaller groups of students. Of course, all of these pieces were recorded by students individually in their own homes and then mixed together. And I am so appreciative of all the work the students put into preparing and recording their parts, and to the parents and families for turning their homes not only into practice rooms, but also recording studios. Throughout the program, we'll also hear from a few students who volunteered to research and share some interesting background information about the pieces and composers you'll be hearing. Now, let's get to the music. The first piece on the program is a small ensemble arrangement of Mariana Martinez's Overture from her Sinfonia in C. Here to tell us a little bit more about the piece is Rachel, a violist in the string orchestra.
Mariana Martinez was an accomplished singer, pianist, and composer during the classical period of music in Vienna, Austria. She wrote music for vocalists, pianists, and orchestras, and even performed some of her work. As a child, Martinez received a quality education, better than most women during her time, and even did some studying and playing with Haydn, a famous classical composer. A single woman her whole life and never formally employed, Martinez overcame many challenges and barriers in her society. Later in her life, she managed an estate where she hosted large musical events attended by many influential composers, including Mozart. Martinez died in Vienna in 1812, but her music lives on today.
Thanks, Rachel. Now, enjoy the performance of Mariana Martinez's Overture. All right, some great playing. That performance featured Annie, Lily T, Cora, and Andrew B. on violin, Colin on the cello, and Isabel on the bass. Moving along, the next performance will feature the entire string orchestra class, which is the larger orchestra at Bothell and includes students from all 4 grade levels. The piece these students have prepared is an arrangement of 2 Hungarian dance melodies, which were put together by composer and arranger Elaine Fine, who currently lives and works as a composer and music educator in Illinois. Now, one of the perks of having our classes online is that it's very easy for guests to join during a Zoom meeting. Elaine herself was kind enough to drop in to the string orchestra class and share a bit about this piece of music that she arranged, as well as some of her story of being a performer, composer, and educator. Here's just a short clip of Elaine speaking to our class about the 2 Hungarian dances.
Hungarian music tends to have these stresses on the first syllable because music comes from the language that's sung and also from the dance, from the gestures in folk dances. So I'm all into Hungarian folk songs, and I thought, oh, this is cool, Hungarian folk songs. And I'm going through them, and all of a sudden I came up with these 2 folk songs. And I started playing them on the piano. I thought, wait a minute, these are the Brahms Hungarian dances. Brahms went through the same kind of book, and found the same kind of folk songs. So I thought, whoa, these would be great for summer strings.
I'll have you know, we learned a lot from Elaine that day, and we were so lucky to have her join us. Now, enjoy the Bothell String Orchestra's performance of 2 Hungarian dances, arranged by Elaine Fine. Great work by the string orchestra. And hey, nobody's judging you if you got up and danced around a little bit during that performance. For our next piece, we're going to slow things down a bit and hear from another small ensemble of students performing an arrangement of Tchaikovsky's famous Andante Cantabile from his first string quartet. Here to tell us a bit more is Annie, a violinist in the string orchestra.
Born in Russia on May 7, 1840, Pyotr Tchaikovsky is one of the most renowned composers of the Romantic period, whose music still continues to make a lasting impression internationally. One of his most well-known works is Andante Cantabile, the second movement of his first string quartet that premiered in 1871. Andante Cantabile opens with a gentle, melancholic tune that expands upon a Ukrainian folk song called Sidel Vanya. Following this folk tune, Tchaikovsky provides a second contrasting theme of his own, until by the end of the movement, both themes return. Andante Cantabile was one of the highest points of Tchaikovsky's career due to its strong particular impression on his audience, and it is a beautiful piece that has stood the test of time.
Thanks, Annie. Now, enjoy the beauty of Tchaikovsky's Andante Cantabile. So wonderful. Another great performance that featured choral, Shekinah, and Samirth on violin, as well as Claudia and Colin on the cello. Great work. In preparing these performances, all the students chose which smaller group pieces they wanted to learn and record. The next piece was by far the most popular choice across both orchestras. It's an arrangement of Gustav Holst's famous melody from the chorale section of Jupiter, one of the movements from his orchestral suite known as the Planets. Let's hear from Madison, a violinist in the chamber orchestra, with some more information about the piece.
Gustav Holst was born on September 21, 1874, and passed on May 25, 1934. His famous piece, Jupiter, was a part of the orchestral suite called the Planets. His pieces ended up spreading internationally after World War I. He also was a successful director and music educator.
Thanks, Madison. Now, enjoy the performance of Jupiter's famous theme by Gustav Holst. Such a great piece and performed very well. Like I said, this was a popular choice. That performance featured Claire, Akshita, Samantha, Sophia, Elisa, Casey, Ryuki, Madison, Shannon, Rohan, Jonghyun, Kshira, Yovita, Yara, Regan, Anna, Maria, Coral, Vianney, and Paula on the violin, Karishma, Sky, Aiden, Caroline, and Kayla on the viola, as well as Colin, Andrew L., Evan, and Josh on the cello. Next on the program is a performance featuring the entire chamber orchestra class, which includes a mix of sophomores, juniors, and seniors. The piece they had prepared was originally written for solo classical guitar by a Spanish guitarist and composer named Francisco Tárrega, who is known as one of the greatest classical guitarists of all time. Tárrega lived from 1852 to 1909, and as a child, suffered from an injury that led him to becoming blind. His father worked to make sure his son could still have a career in music by finding teachers who were also blind and could relate to his son's condition. This paid off, as Francisco Tárrega had a very successful career as a composer and performer on the guitar. The piece that the chamber orchestra has prepared is called Recuerdos de la Alhambra, which translates to Memories of the Alhambra, and commemorates the Alhambra Palace and Fortress in Granada, Spain. Before we hear the orchestra's performance, I wanted to share a small portion of the original piece performed on the classical guitar. Due to the complexity of this piece, many people who hear it for the first time mistake it for a duet. Here's the beginning of the original piece performed by a solo guitar. Now, enjoy Bothell Chamber Orchestra's performance of Recuerdos de la Alhambra, arranged by Tim McCarrick. Such a beautiful piece and a great performance by the chamber orchestra. Now, we'll listen to another small ensemble performing a bright, upbeat scherzo written by Clara Schumann. Here to tell us more is Anna, a violinist in the string orchestra.
Scherzo is a piece from composer Clara Wieck, later known as Clara Schumann. Scherzo is one of her piano concertos, specifically her piano concerto in A minor, opus number 7. Clara was born in 1819 and was a German pianist and composer during the Romantic era. She married fellow composer Robert Schumann and had 8 children with him. During her lifetime, she performed and composed throughout Germany, Austria, Belgium, and Switzerland. Clara died in 1896 at the age of 76 and was buried next to her husband in Bonn, Germany. One fun fact about the Schumanns is that they maintained a relationship with and encouraged fellow famous composer Johannes Brahms.
Thanks, Anna. Enjoy the arrangement of Clara Schumann's Scherzo from her Piano Sonata Opus 7. Wonderful. That performance featured Coral, Braden, Sophia, and Elisa on the violin, and Mila on the cello. Great playing from everybody. Our last small ensemble of the program is a beautiful arrangement of a Scottish folk song by the name The Water is Wide. Let's hear from Andrew, a violinist in the chamber orchestra, who will tell us a bit more about the piece.
The Water is Wide, also called O Wally Wally or Wally Wally, is a folk song of Scottish origin that remains popular in the 21st century. Cecil Sharp published the song in Folk Songs from Somerset in 1906. It is related to the child ballad 204 by Jamie Douglas, which in turn refers to the essentially happy first marriage of James Douglas, second Marquis of Douglas, to Lady Barbara Esquerine.
Thanks, Andrew. Now enjoy this performance of The Water is Wide. So beautiful. Great work on that piece, everybody. That performance featured Alex, Carrie, Sophia, Anna, Michelle, and Andrew on the violin, as well as Rachel, Chris, and Lily S. on the viola, and Colin on the cello. Wow, can we really be at our last piece of the program already? I'd like to take a moment to once again thank all of the orchestra students for their work and their effort over the past few weeks in preparing and recording their parts for these pieces. This has been a year full of challenges, and through it all, I still consider myself lucky to be able to work with such amazing students in the orchestra classes at Bothell. Before we hear the final piece, I wanted to share one other short clip from that day that Elaine Fine, the composer from earlier, joined the string orchestra class. She left us some inspiring words about recognizing the difficulty of making music while isolated from each other, as well as some thoughts about going forward.
I mean, so many times we don't appreciate one another. So many times you have you're playing with people and you're thinking your own thoughts. And you're not thinking about connecting with the other people. And so now we're all in isolation. And all we want to do is connect, and never, ever, ever taking that for granted. You guys have the rest of your lives as musicians to never take it for granted, because you will remember the time when the only way to communicate was, thank goodness we have these devices. Could you imagine if we did not have internet communication, how we would function? But this it's a lesson, it's a time, and you guys are just the right age in your lives to really appreciate it.
Very well said. Thanks again to Elaine for joining our class that day. And with that, we move on to the final piece of the program, which is a collaboration between both of the orchestra classes at BHS. The piece is called D Major Jam and was written by a composer named Jesse Montgomery. The music you will hear is derived from a local project Jesse did in Seattle during the year 2016, where a professional string quartet called the Catalyst Quartet worked with orchestra students who were participating with the Seattle Music Partners. The basic melodies and rhythms used in the piece come from improvisations of both the quartet musicians and the student musicians. Let's hear from Shira, a violinist in the string orchestra, for some more information about the composer.
Jessie Montgomery was raised in Manhattan's Lower East Side in the 1980s. Her father was a musician, and her mother was a theater artist and a storyteller. They frequented the neighborhood, helping Jessie discover some of the joys of that time. Her parents' artistry played a key role in how she viewed music and the arts. Jessie Montgomery, as a modern composer, is an accomplished one, a violinist, and an educator. Her work includes those of solo, chamber, vocal, and orchestral productions. She currently serves as a composer in residence for the Sphinx Virtuosi, the Sphinx organization's flagship professional touring ensemble. Jessie Montgomery was also awarded the Leonard Bernstein Award from the ASCAP Foundation. She's also received additional grants and awards from the ASCAP Foundation, Chamber of Music America, American Composers Orchestra, the Joyce Foundation, and the Sorel Organization. Jessie Montgomery has created a life that educates younger audiences about the joys of music and the arts.
Thanks, Shira. Now, enjoy the performance of D Major Jam by Jessie Montgomery, featuring both of the BHS orchestra classes. What a note to end on. Thank you all so much for listening to Bothell Orchestra Radio.